Ruth chapter 2. Let's call this one Worthy and subtitle it All You Have Done. First of all, because that term worthy is going to literally be used to describe a man we'll see later on in the chapter by the name of Boaz. But before we get there, Ruth and Naomi have now come back to Naomi's home territory, Bethlehem in Israel. Ruth having clung to Naomi to make sure she is not alone during this time of grief and uncertainty in her life. And so Ruth's good intentions have taken her off of the beaten path. And oftentimes when we take a chance to try to do the right thing, there is no blueprint that's laid out for how we are going to accomplish whatever it is that we have in our heart to do. So we have to try to move forward in wisdom, which is why we often go to a verse in the book of James that says, if any of you lack wisdom, ask God who provides it generously. And so Ruth was taking a chance. And as a practical matter, since Naomi was up in age, Ruth needed to go out and get a job. And that's basically what she commits to do when she asks Naomi permission to go out and basically glean from the fields of someone who might have sympathy on them, understanding there was a law in Israel that during the time of harvest, there's a provision that said an owner of a field was only supposed to glean a portion of it, leaving the corners for those who were destitute for one reason or another, whether they were simply poor, orphaned, or widowed. And that's exactly what Naomi and Ruth are. And so Ruth's job as a Moabite now traveling in Israel is to try to provide food for this new family, which is now basically just her and Naomi. And so she does that. But the portion of the chapter that describes Boaz as worthy becomes relevant to the degree that Ruth's kindness in clinging to Naomi has started to spin into a story that has gone ahead of her. So before she even arrives to work in Boaz's field, her reputation precedes her for the better. And so even though Boaz has a reputation as a worthy man, there's a saying that goes, game recognized game, and we have used it before to say that people of a certain level of talent tend to have respect for others who are talented in the same way. Likewise, people who value certain character traits tend to have an eye towards people who have those character traits. And Boaz, being described as a worthy man, has an eye for this young woman and all of the worthy things that she has done in risking her own not only future, but we're going to see in this chapter her own safety to try to help provide for Naomi. Because one of the things Boaz is going to say first is, stay in my field because I can provide you safety here. And just in case it seems like he's simply trying to be flattering or make more of his ability than he can, when she gets home that evening for working in the fields, Naomi's going to say, stay in his field because in another field you might get assaulted. Understanding that the very first few verses in the book of Ruth says this is all happening during the period of the Judges. And as we just left the book of Judges, realize once again that period in Israel's history was characterized by everyone doing what was right in their own eyes. And so just as we saw the tribe of Benjamin having wives provided for them by kidnapping, there's no telling what could have happened to a foreigner in Israel during this period of Israel's history. And so when we look at this chapter as describing Boaz as a worthy man, beyond him simply having that reputation, we see him looking out for a defenseless foreigner in Israel in a way that would suggest that his actions are actually consistent with his reputation. And more importantly, as a worthy man, he looks for that kind of character in others. And so understand how this second chapter of the book of Ruth is showing us how God is bringing together two individuals of high character so that in future chapters he can show us ways in which together they're going to be able to accomplish things that apart they'd never get done. Which is why we often say God's best to you as you go forward in him, God willing, displaying high character and hoping that in due time he will bring you into partnership likewise with people of high character with whom you can accomplish great things.